Franz Kafka never set out to be the voice of the absurd. He never imagined that his own name would mutate into an adjective, Kafkaesque. A single word whispered to describe a reality so twisted, so suffocating, that you're not sure if you've stumbled into a nightmare, or if you've simply opened your eyes to the world as it truly is. And here's the cruelest irony of all. The man who stripped bare the illusions of order, who mapped the architecture of human despair with surgical precision, died believing his own work was worthless. Kafka was born in Prague in 1883, already out of alignment with his father's blueprint for a son. Hermann Kafka was a man forged in hunger and humiliation, aggressive, domineering, a merchant who clawed his way from poverty into the velvet halls of middle-class respectability. In his eyes, strength wasn't just a virtue, it was the minimum requirement for existence. He expected Franz to be a mirror of himself, resilient, loud, unflinching. Instead, Franz was small, sickly, and unnervingly sensitive. A boy whose mind absorbed everything, but whose body never matched the brute force his father admired. This mismatch became the fault line of his life. Psychologists today would call his home a chronic shame environment, a place where the most important authority in your life teaches you over and over that who you are is inherently inadequate. From a dark psychology standpoint, this is trauma imprinting at its purest form. The father becomes an unreachable archetype, a god who only ever speaks in the language of disappointment. This dynamic hardwires a permanent contradiction into the psyche. You are desperate to earn approval, but you know deep down it will never come. The result? A mind trapped in a maze designed by someone else, where the walls keep shifting. That maze, its paranoia, its hopeless negotiations, its invisible rules, became the blueprint for Kafka's fictional worlds. Hermann Kafka's will was absolute. Literature was not a respectable path. So Franz studied law, graduated and began working, first in a law office and later at an insurance company. On paper, it was stable work. In reality, it was theater for the mind's slow death. The hours were long. The overtime was unpaid. The paperwork was endless, the kind that buries your desk and your soul at the same time. Every request came with its own small absurdity. A signature that required another signature, a form that could only be approved by an office that no longer existed, instructions rewritten the moment you followed them. Kafka wasn't just working in a company. He was living inside a psychological petri dish of systemic dysfunction. These massive, faceless structures weren't merely inefficient, they were deliberately unknowable. No single person had control, yet everyone participated. And the more you tried to understand it, the more you sank into it. This is the essence of the Kafkaesque, the world as a self-reinforcing labyrinth. A place where the rules are always changing, the goalposts are always moving, and the authority, if it exists at all, is too far away to touch. Modern neuroscience has revealed why Kafka's fictional hellscapes feel so disturbingly familiar. The human brain is a pattern detection machine. We survive by finding cause and effect, understanding the rules so we can predict what happens next. But when the rules are unclear, unstable, or contradictory, the brain goes into overdrive. The search for order becomes obsessive. You run the mental simulation again and again, hunting for a pattern that isn't there. And here's the dark part. This search burns energy, heightens cortisol, and erodes your sense of agency. The longer it goes on, the more your mind collapses in on itself. Kafka didn't just observe this, he lived it. His daily life at the insurance company was a live experiment in learned helplessness, The more he tried to understand the machine, the more it revealed that understanding was impossible. From a psychological perspective, this is devastating, because unpredictability isn't just stressful. It's the most potent form of mental destabilization known to the human nervous system. It turns thinking into a trap. Kafka's genius was that he took this trap, this private hell, and transformed it into literature. He showed that the system's power didn't come from its rules, but from the fact that the rules could never be fully known. And that, in the end, was the point. What's Kafkaesque? It's not just about absurd bureaucracy. It's the psychological sensation of being trapped in a game whose rules you don't know, can't learn, and might not even exist, yet you keep playing, because not playing feels worse. It's waking up one day to find that you've been accused, condemned, or transformed with no explanation and no way out, and discovering that the worst part isn't the punishment, it's the senselessness. In the trial, Joseph K. is arrested without explanation. He's shuffled through endless corridors, pointless hearings, corrupt officials, and hollow reassurances. His trial becomes a performance with no audience, no script, and no ending, until his execution, when he still doesn't know the crime. The horror isn't in the verdict. It's in never knowing what game he was playing to begin with. In Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up as a giant insect. The first thing on his mind is not the grotesque absurdity of his body, but how he'll get to work on time. He clings to the very system that will soon discard him. His transformation isn't just physical, it's the cruel exposure of a truth. When our usefulness to the system ends, so does our worth in its eyes. Dark psychology tells us something unsettling. Humans cling to familiar suffering more than they embrace unfamiliar freedom. Why? Because the brain fears uncertainty more than pain. Neuroscience confirms this. Unpredictable stresses activate the brain's fear circuits more intensely than predictable threats. Even a guaranteed negative outcome can be less stressful than a vague, shifting unknown. This is the essence of the Kafkaesque. The absurdity isn't only in the world. It's in our own willingness to keep playing a game that is rigged against us. We obey rules we don't understand. We seek approval from faceless powers. We keep filing the paperwork, making the calls, showing up to the hearings, because the alternative is stepping into the void, and the void is terrifying. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Part of us wants the struggle. Evolution wired the human brain to find purpose in problem solving. The act of striving, even against impossible odds, lights up the same neural reward systems as winning. The effort itself becomes addictive. This is why people remain in toxic relationships, soul-crushing jobs, or hopeless political fights. The battle gives us the illusion of agency, a sense that we are shaping something, even if that something is just the walls of our own cage. In Kafka's stories, characters don't fight because they believe they'll win. They fight because fighting is the only thing keeping them from collapsing into the black hole of meaninglessness. Psychology has a name for this: learned persistence, the dark twin of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when repeated failure convinces you to stop trying. Learned persistence is when repeated failure convinces you to keep trying anyway, because stopping would feel like the death of the self. Kafka's work is not an invitation to despair. It's a mirror, one that strips away the comforting lies we tell ourselves. He forces us to see that our battles against the absurd are, in some sense, unwinnable. And yet he shows something darker still. Not fighting is worse. This is why Kafka's writing hits like a punch to the chest. It bypasses the polite optimism we coat over our lives and plugs straight into the raw circuitry of the human condition. The need for answers we'll never get. The need for control we'll never have. The need for meaning in a universe that refuses to provide it. And here's the paradox that makes Kafka so addictive. When you face these truths without flinching, you stop being their prisoner. You see the cage. You see the bars. And sometimes that's enough to walk through the door, not because the game is over, but because you've stopped pretending you didn't know you were playing it. The Kafkaesque didn't die with the typewriter or the cobblestone streets of Prague. It's not sealed away in dusty courtrooms or between the pages of novels about men turning into insects. It's here, embedded in the fine print you didn't have time to read, in the labyrinth of automated customer service menus that loop you back to the start, in the polite but impenetrable email from HR that values your feedback but refuses to answer your question. It's in the immigration office that somehow lost your paperwork for the third time. In the tax form that references a regulation that references another form that doesn't exist anymore. In the moment you're told that's just the process, and realize no one in the room can actually explain what the process is. We like to imagine the Kafkaesque as an exotic absurdity, something foreign to daily life. But it's domestic, intimate. It's the low-grade static that runs beneath modern existence. And the most haunting part? You still fight. You call again. You send the follow-up email. You stand in the queue for the third hour. Not because you think the machine will suddenly work in your favor, but because not trying feels like surrender. The absurd wins when you give up. And so, like Joseph K., like Gregor Samsa, you keep moving forward, trapped, confused and exhausted, yet strangely unwilling to just lie down. Because on some level you already know the struggle isn't just against the system. The struggle is what's keeping you alive inside it. The question isn't whether the struggle is pointless. The question is whether we're brave enough to keep struggling anyway, knowing it might be.